Welcome to this edition of the Native News Update. I'm your host, Paul Demain, for this edition on Tuesday, December 15th. Many of the stories here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com. Here are the news stories from the day from the Associated Press and other news sources. Residents of the Pine Ridge Reservation, fed up with alcoholism and what they say is Nebraska's contribution to the wolves, are pleading for a detox center in or near the beer-drenched town of White Clay, Nebraska. The idea, agreed to by leaders of the Oglala Sioux tribe, is being floated to Nebraska lawmakers who are studying ways to address the problems. 4 stores that mainly comprise White Clay, Nebraska, total population 14, sell about 4 million cans of beer annually, most to residents of the Pine Ridge Reservation. Liquor is banned on the reservation, but is just across the border in South Dakota within walking distance of White Clay. Two Bowls says the council wants an additional tax on beer sold in White Clay, with revenue going toward a detox and homeless shelter. The council also agreed that alcohol should not be sold in White Clay on Sundays or during holidays. The U.S. Army has recognized the military service and sacrifice of Maine's Penobscot Indian Nation. In a ceremony last week on Indian Island, a Department of the Army official presented a Penobscot Nation flag to the sister of Donald Raymond Francis, who was killed in the Philippines in February 1945 during World War II. During the Freedom Team Salute ceremony, the service of 3 Army veterans still living on the island was also recognized. American Indian veterans should begin receiving long overdue reimbursements of tax dollars unlawfully withheld from their military paychecks in New Mexico. An estimated 9,000 American Indian veterans live in that state alone. Those who can prove state income tax was unjustly withheld from their military paychecks can collect a piece of a settlement fund. New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department Secretary Rick Homans told veterans in Shiprock, Arizona, that checks should begin showing up in mailboxes early next year. Police say an 18-foot tall totem pole stolen from a West Seattle park has been found in Keyser, Oregon, near Salem. The Seattle Times reports a 69-year-old West Seattle man led investigators to the pole. Police said he apparently had a crew with a crane help move the totem pole, but it's not clear whether those workers knew the man did not have permission to take the landmark. The totem pole was first missed last week. The Rotary Club of West Seattle donated the pole to the city in 1976 and estimated it would cost about $75,000 to replace. And now we have a short update with and about some Alaska stories with Alaska Public Radio Network News Director Lori Townsend. Tell us a little bit about what kind of news Alaskan Public Radio Network is covering up in Alaska here.
Well, last week there was a manhunt that was underway for the better part of the week. There was a young man from Kotzebue who was eluding troopers on snowmobile, or snow machine as it's called here in Alaska. For several days he was accused of raping a young woman in Kayana, a small village in northwest Alaska. And because he grew up in the Kotzebue area, he was able to elude officers. They ended up sending about 9 troopers and some ATF agents after him. After the alleged rape, he went to Norvik and pulled an assault rifle on an officer there, and then fled that area as well, and was seen in Selawik. They thought that he may go to Shognak, another village in the area. But he did surrender Friday night, and so they have him in custody now.
I was reading a little bit about a pension issue up there of some Alaskans during World War II that had done some service guarding Alaska from the Japanese. My understanding is there was some legislation or something that occurred that's going to allow them to get paid. Have you got that story?
Yes, the Alaska Territorial Guard served during World War II, and the controversy came up when the Obama administration decided to classify those service members as state employees, which of course they weren't. For one thing, Alaska wasn't a state in that time, and so they were commissioned, asked to do this service, which is they were like the guard of the border between Alaska and Russia, and kept a vigilant watch over the the shorelines and served that frontline defense. And our state senators, Murkowski and Begich, went to bat for them and inserted language to reinstate their payments. And it looks like that's gone through now, and they should get that reinstated in February.
Well, I remember that I remember reading something about actually some kind of a land attack or bombing up on Alaska at one point by the Japanese?
Right, in the Aleutian Islands. They landed on the islands, and there were numerous battles there, tremendous battles in the Aleutians.
I think most people on the lower 48 don't realize that.
There's been some movement lately to kind of do a reconciliation between Japanese service members and American service members out on some of the islands where some of the most terrible attacks occurred and many people died. And it was an amazing time in our history because the Japanese were on American territory, on American soil, and it was very close at that time. This was one of the major battle areas.
What else might we hear coming from Alaskan Public Radio Network?
Well, some of your viewers may know about the review that has been called for by Interior Secretary Ken Salazar for the subsistence management system in Alaska. And that's ongoing right now. There's a federal subsistence management board, and the federal government considers the system broken, and they want to overhaul it. And now the commissioner of the State Department of Fish and Game has asked for an extension on the public comment period. So that just came out. They want that to be extended into, I guess he says February. He's looking for an extension. And Denby Lloyd is the commissioner of the Fish and Game department here in Alaska, and he wants more time to have input into this. It's an enormous issue with Alaska Native people here in the state because it's how so many of them live and make their living is out on the country. And so subsistence regulations have been tightened through the years, and people now are feeling that this is the time to really kind of push back. One of our state lawmakers, a representative, Tlingit representative from Angoon, was arrested last summer for taking more fish than he was supposed to, and he's fighting this charge and saying that the number of fish that people are allowed to take through subsistence isn't enough to feed their families through the winter.
Right, a lot of controversy with this, and I know we want to get back to you sometime in the future and talk to you a little bit more about that, how it relates to treaty rights or the lack of treaty rights. If people want to listen to some of your programming, where can they go to find your programming?
They can go to www.aprn.org and click on Alaska News Nightly, and all the rundowns are there. You can do a search and find the stories you're looking for.
All right, thank you much. We're going to talk to you again in the future. Appreciate you joining the Native News Update today.
Thanks, Paul.
And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank you for joining with us. Come again soon. Miigwech.